Hi guys, you're joining me today at Tunnel Barn Farm. Now I'm on peg 26 on Extension Lake and I'm going to be taking you through one of the most talked about and in my eyes the most efficient and effective way of fishing shallow, and that is the overshotted rig. So here today now on 26, the thing I like about this peg is that just coming off the far bank you've got some rushes and it's still 3.5 to 4 foot deep on the edge of the rushes. So what you can actually do is fish shallow up to those rushes. So what I'm doing, I'm just shipping over with my overshotted rig. I'm going right to the edge of the rushes. I'm going to put my rig in the water and start feeding. Now the process, what you need to do with this overshotted rig is follow the rig into the water. So once you've fed your maggots touching on the edge of those rushes, I'm just going to lower my float into the water. Obviously because it's overshotted, it's going to sink. I'm going to dip my pole tip into the water maybe 6 inches and I'm going to flick it out again. Now what you're doing is you're working the rig the whole time with this. You're lifting and dropping. Just lift and drop, and you're making a tiny little bit of noise on the water with the pole tip flicking and disturbing the touch of the surface of the water. But what you've got to do is just keep feeding and just keep working the rig. Now the reason why this rig is so effective and so efficient is that you don't actually miss any bites whatsoever. Because the rig's overshotted, at no point is there any slack between the hook bait and your pole tip. So every single time the fish picks the bait up, you're going to be getting the elastic pulled out every time. And that's why it's so efficient and so effective. You can fish this rig down the middle if you want to, but today with this cover on the far bank, I'm going to choose to fish it across. Now this peg here is probably 16 meters wide. I'm fishing virtually a full 16 meters with a short top kit and a short fore. Now one of the pieces of kit that you need to have to get the motion of the pole working correctly, where you can dip the tip into the water and flick again, is a stiff pole. Now I've had my RX Expert now for about 3 years and it's never missed a beat. It's simply the best bit of kit that for me that Maver have ever used and ever made. I'm using it, like I said, with a short kit and a short fore, which makes it ultra responsive, which is exactly what you need to get the motion of the pole correct. And you've got to pick the speed that you drop your rig in at. And the very best anglers have just got a knack of dropping the rig into the water, flicking again, dropping the rig into water and flicking again, and getting the right speed. I personally think the correct speed that you drop your rig in is the speed that the float sinks at. So I'll just take you through my rig quickly. To start off with, we've got a size 18 ES43 to a 5-inch hook length of 012 MVR hook length mono. Now at the very top of the loop, we've got a really simple basic shotting pattern. We've got 4 number 10 shot. The main line itself is 018 MVR rig line. Now the rules here today at Tunnel Barn say that you have to use a float. So I've just got a number 1 dibber, the very smallest dibber that you can get, just to make sure that you're confined with the rules. Now the whole total length of the rig here now is 16 inches. But on the day, if it was a match situation, I'd have 12, 16, 20 and 24 inches made up. All exactly the same, just the length of the rig a little bit longer and shorter to match the depth that you're going to fish at. The elastic is what I use for absolutely everything, an 8 to 11 dual core through a short grey top kit. The most basic rig in the world, just a bulk, a float, the rig at a certain length, but with it being overshotted, if you can get the motion of the pole correct, the speed, the feed in, fishing up to cover, if you can get that all correct and there's enough fish in your peg, I can promise you, you will just catch a fish every single cast. Right, let's get back in. I'll talk you through the process of what I'm doing today. Now, if you were fishing shorter shallow, I preferably would ship out, drop my rig in, and then start feeding and get the fish coming to the area that you're fishing. But because we're fishing so far today, this peg's wide, it's nearly a full 16 meters. What I'm going to actually do in the process is feed before I ship out. So I'm going to feed as accurate as possible. Feeding maggots at 16 meters isn't the easiest thing. So that's why it's important that you get the wind right. But we're blessed with some good weather today, so we can just feed fairly accurate. I'm going to ship in. Now, A lot of people turn their rig over when they get to that certain point that they're fishing, but I tend to, on venues like this where the fish are a little bit wary, I tend to just ship out, drop my rig into the water, let it all settle and sink, and start working it. Now in general, if you haven't had your elastic pulled out, by the 5th or 6th, maybe 7th time that you flicked it, I'll start feeding again and repeat the process. So drop your float into the water and there you go. Just as I drop the float into the water then, the elastic pulled out. Now that's perfect, that shows that you're fishing at the correct depth. If you're striking up and hooking all your fish, sometimes that means you're fishing a little bit too deep. Or if you're not getting quick bites, that may be a sign that you're fishing too shallow. But having 4 rigs set up, all at different depths, exactly the same, you can literally ship in, pick a new rig up and away you go again. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get that one back to a top kit. I'm going to get it in as quick as possible. And I'm going to repeat the process. So into the keep net the fish goes. Rebait up, 2 white maggots on the hook. I'm going to feed some bait as accurately as I can. Just dropped a little bit short that. It's quite difficult in this weather. That's a little bit better, and away we go. Ship out nice and quickly. I'm not going to turn the rig over, I'm just going to put it in, dip that pole in the water 6 inches and start working your rig. So lower, 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 watch that float sink, dip this pole tip and just work it. Just a little strike up, watch that float come out of the water, quite an aggressive little strike up and lower again. Lower, lower and strike up. Lower, strike up. I've just dropped a little bit short of those reeds. I've been getting most of my bites literally putting the rig right touching the reeds. Just going to strike. I'm going to probably, that's 3 or 4 times now. There we go. Oh, that just hooked one then, but it seemed to have popped off. I'm just going to give it probably 3 or 4 more flicks and I'm going to feed again and just keep working your rig. But like I said, this rig for me is so effective and so efficient just because you simply don't miss any bites. You tend to not hook any small fish either, any roach. That's why it's just so efficient. Every time you go over, there we go, that's it just pulled out. Every time you go over, if you can catch a fish like this, if you can get them competing in your peg, you just come back with a fish every time. You hook most of them in the mouth. You don't miss any bites. There's no frustration through missing bites or losing fish. But like I said, the most important part of this whole process is using the right pole, getting the timings right of lowering. Oh, it's just popped off that one. But lowering your pole at the right speed and just flicking it. And the more you do of this type of fishing, the better you'll become at just getting the knack of getting the speed of the pole correct. So we'll do that process again. I'll try and catch you another one since that one popped off at the net. I'll try and get you one and then hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an insight into exactly how to fish an overshotted rig. So I've just fed, that time it went in absolutely lovely, that did. The wind just dropped a touch. And ship over, line up with the edge of those reeds, and then just start working your rig. Lower, just a little short, sharp strike when it gets down to the maximum depth. The strike is definitely a lot quicker than the lower. So you're trying to lower the float at the speed at what is sinking once it's in the water. That's 5 or 6 times. We'll just give it a couple more flicks. And then we'll feed some more maggots and then we'll just keep working the rig. But I can promise you though, on the right day, this method and how I'm fishing at the moment, especially if you draw a peg that's a little bit narrower, so say like if you draw a peg that's like 11, 12 meters wide, it can be absolutely devastating because you can keep your bait really accurately. and you can just go in and hook one every chuck. So I've just fed again. Don't worry about the odd maggot going into the rushes. That's probably a good thing. It just keeps a few fish in your peg, and we just keep working the rig. Oh, there we go. All right, I'll try and get this one in for you. So just take your time shipping back. Keep everything nice and low to the water. That 8 to 11 last stick is working beautiful, as always. And there we go. Another decent fish. So there we go. That's using an overshotted rig to cover for F1s with maggots, but it really is the most effective and efficient method that you could ever use to catching these.